Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast. It's a show filled with family history, research, strategies and techniques, news and entertainment, and inspiration. And I'm your host, Lisa Louise Cook. Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 162. I am Lisa Louise Cook. Good to be back and chatting with you. We are approaching the holidays, but that doesn't stop us here at Genealogy Gems. We've got lots of family history updates to give you. We've got some items in the mailbox and some gems. So let's just jump right into it. First thing, let's talk about some of the new records that are coming online. We love to see this, and certainly Family Search is out there once again leading the pack at FamilySearch.org. They've announced some recent updates, including VA pension cards and some South American records. They have added more than 192 million images and indexed records from North and South America and Europe, of course, in their growing collection. So you'll be seeing records from places like Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Spain, Switzerland, Wales, and, of course, the U.S., And there are some notable collections that we want to talk about here. First of all, this U.S. Veterans Administration pension payment cards. These records range from 1907 to 1933, and they come out of the United States Public Records Index. Here's how Family Search describes the kinds of cards and records you'll be finding. On the front of the cards for invalid veterans are recorded the names of the veteran, his certificate number, his unit or arm of service, the disability for which he's pensioned, the law or the laws under which pensioned, the class of pension or certificate, the rate of pension, the effective date, the date of the certificate, any fees paid, and the name of the pension agency or group transferred from, if it's applicable. And there's also a date of death, the date the Bureau was notified, the former roll number, and something called home. Now, on the reverse side of the form, you're going to find the name of the veteran, his certificate number, and the record of the individual payments. The Army and Navy widows cards are similar to these invalid cards, with the addition of the widow's name and occasionally information regarding payments that were made to minors, but they don't indicate if the veteran had a disability. You can read more about it, see an example of one of these records over at the Genealogy Gems blog. The post is called Family Search. Updates include VA pension cards and South American records. I'll have a link to that in the show notes for you. And we have a winner. Now, I think many of you heard about, certainly a lot of you entered into our contest that we ran recently over at our Genealogy Gems podcast Facebook page. Amanda Pate was the winner of the Family Tree Magazine digital subscription giveaway. We have been running some blog posts at the blog about collaboration. Now, Sunny Morton, our contributing editor here at Genealogy Gems, and I, we had gotten together and written an article for Family Tree Magazine all about teaming up and collaboration, and we've been putting together some blog posts giving you some tips from that article, and included in those blog posts was this giveaway for the 1-year digital subscription to Family Tree Magazine. Amanda is a blogger herself, and actually that was the collaborative gem that she shared over at the Genealogy Gems Facebook page. Her blog is called ABT-UNK. That's the actual name. Now, it combines two common genealogy abbreviations, about and unknown. And Amanda points us to a recent blog post that she wrote. She says a really good example of collaboration is there on her blog. The two photographs that she has there in the post were provided by two cousins of different degrees who found her via her blog. And 5 different people that have been involved in identifying the people in the Christmas cousins picture that she has there. She also says here, I've connected with lots of other kin who found me via my blog, including a distant cousin in Lithuania who helped me break through a brick wall there. And they provided a wealth of information and wonderful photographs. Now, Amanda was randomly selected, but boy, she's a poster child for what we've been preaching here at Genealogy Gems, which is to get your family history out on your own genealogy blog. You can do that for free. Create your own blog. Write about what you've been researching and finding and what some of your brick walls are. And just like Amanda, some of those cousins could find you. They do their Google searches. They're looking for family history, and up pops your blog, and then you make that connection. So congratulations to Amanda, both on winning the giveaway and, of course, on all her excellent research and her blog. We'll have a link to her blog in the show notes so that you can check it out and see what she's been up to and maybe get some inspiration to get out there yourself, putting the word out about your family history and making those connections. Some new researchers that you could collaborate with. Pretty fun. Now let's see what else is going on here. Well, now NGS, the National Genealogical Society, of course, they have their yearly conference. The next one's coming up in May 7th through the 10th of 2014. It's going to be in Richmond, Virginia, and they have just released the program. I'll have a link for you in the show notes. I'm going to be there in Richmond, teaching 3 different classes. We're going to be doing Google search strategies for common surnames, tech tools that catapult the newspaper research process into the 20th century, and finding living relatives like a private eye. Registration opened up formally December 1st of 2013, so now's the time. You can download their 16-page registration brochure and do all your registration online. It's going to be a great event out there in Richmond, Virginia. And finally, got another little records update for you here. You know, you can find over 1 million British church records that are now indexed, again, over at Family Search. This is another new announcement that they just came out with. I didn't want to miss this one. The collection includes bishops' registers of baptisms, marriages, and burials from the mid-1600s all the way through the mid-1900s. Baptismal records can include a child's name, date and place of the baptism, the parents' names and residency, legitimacy status of the child, the father's occupation, and the minister's name. If you're looking for marriage records, you might find information like their name, age, the marital status, where they lived, the bride and groom, the date and place that the marriage took place, fathers of the bride and groom, and information on whether banns were published. And in terms of burial records, you can also get name, age, residence of the deceased, and the date and parish of burial. Of course, so many folks who lived in England up until about the mid-1800s or so oftentimes were members of the Church of England, so they very likely could be included in these records. The images of these records have actually been online since 2010, but this new index is what's going to make them a lot easier to search for you. So again, that's over at FamilySearch.org. Okay, well, coming up next, I want to hear from you, and we are going to do that over at the mailbox.
From my old hometown, one with some jokes from my old pal Jim Brown. Bring me a letter from that girl of mine, saying that he's longing for me all the time. Bring me a letter from my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
All right, over here at the mailbox, I have an assortment of messages and emails and posts here. Let's see here from Gary. He says, there was a recent episode of a Las Vegas-based CSI television show in which a genealogist was used to help solve a crime, and the head CSI guy, played by Ted Danson, and the genealogist debated about genealogy being a science. Only took them 1 hour and 30 commercials to do what takes us a lifetime. Oh, if it were so easy. Oh, but 30 commercials you had to sit through. Yeah, interesting. Well, that's an interesting debate. Is genealogy a science? You want to check out that episode that Gary's talking about. It's Las Vegas CSI. I totally admit I haven't seen it. I tend to be more into the real true crime shows versus the but television shows. So I kind of watch like 48 Hours and what's the other one? Forensic Files. But interesting. Okay, well, thanks for sharing, Gary. Roger in Utah is a premium member, and he wrote in about our last episode. He says, thanks for another great podcast. This time it was on my ancestral homeland of Norway. He says, I have spent many hours using the digital archivit.no website. Now, that's the digital archives from the Archives of Norway. And I had interviewed the chief archivist there for the Family Tree Magazine podcast. And as you know, we invited him over to cover a little bit more about the website here at Genealogy Gems. Roger says, while you can use the English version of the website, parts of it are only in Norwegian. So that's a good thing to know. He says, Norway, like most Scandinavian countries, has put nearly all of their parish records online. It's a wonderful resource. You have to learn what some of the words are, such as birth, christening, confirmation, marriage, death, etc. But even just these can help a lot. Yeah, good point. And certainly you could use Google Translate. Go in there and translate. Get yourself a little checklist of what those key words are, and then you can start looking through the digital archive. He says if you learn a few more Norwegian words, you can more fully access the vast amount of information available on that site. In that podcast, you also talked about taking a risk and contacting someone about possible family information. Through some of my Norwegian research, I found a man who lives in a little town about an hour north of Oslo. He is the leader of a group called the Hadelandlag Society. I think I said that right. Hadeland is a region of Norway. I got an email address for this man and I contacted him. He's been wonderful to me. He went to a local repository and looked up information on my family from the information I gave him. Of course, I thanked him profusely for helping someone he did not even know. We now have emailed several times. Certainly, the risk paid off. I've also found some U.S. chapters of that society and have become a member. And I found some distant cousins as a result, one in Canada and one in Minnesota. We email somewhat regularly. See what taking the risk can do. Well, you know, Roger, these are great examples of the benefits of taking a risk. No risk, no gain. I think this is a wonderful example. So thank you so much for writing in and sharing that. And Matt wrote in. He has a mystery and he's looking for extra sets of eyes. So we need all your help out there. He says, thanks for your podcast. Even listening to the older podcasts can provide needed perspective on how to break through your brick walls. Speaking of brick walls, mine may be crumbling. I've been trying to trace the ancestors of my great-grandmother. Up until this past summer, I had no information whatsoever. On May 30th, 2013, I found an 1855 New York State Census entry that may tell me who her family is. I wrote up a blog entry about the current status of the search, and I'd be interested in your thoughts. Matt's blog is at matthewkmiller.blogspot.com, and the blog post is called What Constitutes Proof? So I will have the link to his blog post. If you have some time, interested in a little bit of a mystery, go take a look at his blog post and maybe leave him some comments and your thoughts and perspective on the information that he's got there. I know he's really interested in some additional input from other genealogists out there. And Alan recently wrote in. He lives out in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He says, I just started listening to the podcast about a year ago. Welcome, Alan. And he says, it's been a great reminder of things that I'd forgotten, like how to use Google. Thanks for your hints. I've found descendants for two of my wife's great uncles who moved away from the farm in Illinois, and we lost track of them. The Google tips from early on in the series have even helped in projects at work. My colleagues think I'm spending hours searching for things that I'm finding in a couple of minutes with some of the tricks. Also, after hearing about blogging, your family history for at least the last 3 podcasts, I finally decided to take the leap and started publishing my discoveries on a blog. So his blog is groundhoggenealogist.blogspot.com. He says I can post there rather than send emails and miss some of the cousins or send Facebook messages and miss the others. I've only written 2 posts. One's up, one is set to publish, but I hope that this is something that I can keep up. Just a note to say thanks. Well, Alan, you are welcome. I love hearing how Google search tips help you guys out. And, I've heard from more than one of you that you're not using them just for genealogy, but you are using them at school, using them at work. Hey, look brilliant to all your fellow coworkers. That's awesome. And we will check out your blog at groundhoggenealogist.blogspot.com. And I have to agree with you. I think in a lot of ways, the blog is kind of the great solution to reaching out to so many different people, because anybody can subscribe to a blog. You can email the posts. If you're only posting on Facebook or you're only tweeting on Twitter, you're not catching everybody. And so the blog kind of gives you that one central clearinghouse for all your information, and then you can move it out into the different social channels to reach all the different relatives. That's a great point. Congratulations, Alan. Janice from Montreal, Canada wrote in, and she said she's also started up a blog. She attended the BIF HSGO conference that was up in Ottawa, Canada, a couple of months ago. And she says, partly as a result of hearing your advice, I have started a blog on which I'm posting the short family history articles I've been writing, as well as comments on the research process. The story called An Economic Immigrant explains why I'm a Canadian rather than an American. Please take a quick look when you get a chance. So here is her blog, writinguptheancestors.blogspot.com. Well, congrats, Janice, on getting that up and running. Great job. And finally, Ethan wrote in, had a question. He says, I recently went to look for the graves of my great-grandparents and learned in doing so that their son, my grandpa's brother, died in World War II. Since he has a very common name, which was George L. Allen, I have been unsuccessful in trying to look up his records on fold3.com or other search engines. Any hints on how to narrow my search? Here's the information that I was able to obtain just from his headstone. Private First Class, 63rd Armored Infantry Battalion, 11th Armored Division. He died January 6, 1945, just as the war was dying down. Other than that, Ethan says, I don't know if he was in the Pacific or in Europe. My fold3.com search yields thousands of results. Any help would be appreciated. Well, Ethan, this is a great question. And when I have these kinds of challenges, one of the first places I go these days is YouTube. I mean, who would have thought? It's not just cat videos anymore anyway. Over at YouTube, Fold3 has a YouTube channel, and they do some educational videos on how to use the Fold3 website. And in particular, I want to point you to the video. It's called How to Search on Fold3. I'll have a link in the show notes. I'll even probably embed the whole video so all of you guys can watch it there in the show notes. But this is a great way to just kind of go and get up to speed, make sure that you're using all the techniques that they recommend in getting the best results out of their website. But if you don't get the full answer that you're looking for, you can leave a comment on the video. You know, YouTube is a social network as well. It is all about social interaction, people talking to each other, leaving comments on videos. So do that. Use that mechanism. Leave a comment on the video. Ask a more specific question if they don't address kind of exactly the challenge you're having, particularly when it comes to a common name like you mentioned. And you could even ask, is there another way to reach them or to contact them? As a YouTube channel provider, I have my own YouTube channel, as you know. Anytime somebody leaves comments, we get an email generated to us saying, hey, there's a new comment there, and that prompts us to do a response. So they should get your comment pretty quickly, and even if they can't answer it there in YouTube's comment section, they could at least respond and perhaps direct you to other information to help you get better results. I also noticed just a couple of weeks ago that Family Tree Magazine was having a live webinar, and this was the subject. It was called Making the Most of Fold 3. There was a fee for it, and I don't even have the date in front of me. I think it was on November 21st. So my guess is this has already been recorded and would be available at Shop Family Tree, and you could get a hold of that Making the Most of Fold 3 webinar, because that's going to give you a full hour, again, of digging into the website and really showing the tips and tricks on how to get better search results. So I hope that helps out. Good luck. And thanks to all of you so much for writing in. You know, podcasts are even kind of a social network. I love the fact that we get to have this kind of discussion. Keep it going. If you have a question for me, send me an email, genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com, or you can still leave a voicemail on the voicemail line, 925-272-4021, and I will make every attempt to answer you here on the show. All right, well, coming up next, we've got our first gem. We are going to zap that grandma gap with some new resources.
From my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I'll bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
I've got some great news for all you genealogists out there. Roots Magic 6 is now available, and it offers some of the most customer-requested features, like online publishing, the ability to search every record, not just people, an editable timeline view, which is really incredible, and new web tags, which lets you link people, sources, places, and research log items to web pages, plus dozens of other great enhancements, and of course, all the built-in features that you've come to enjoy. There is a little something here for everyone. Now, if you're already a devoted Roots Magic user like I am, or if you're looking to take the next step in your family history research and finally start recording your family tree in your own genealogy database, or if you've just been wanting to make a switch to a much more user-friendly program, there's no better time to get your copy of Roots Magic 6. Do it now. Go to rootsmagic.com and download your risk-free trial of Roots Magic 6. You'll see why professionals and beginners alike choose Roots Magic at rootsmagic.com. My good friend Janet Havorka of Family Chart Masters has certainly been here on the show before, and she is the author of the book Zap the Grandma Gap. Well, just in time for the holidays, and I think this is really cool, she's got some new workbooks coming out. Remember the workbooks and the activity books that we did as kids? They had coloring pages and crossword puzzles, and I love dot to dot. You remember the dot to dot pages? Well, all of these come together to help our kids really understand family history and how it applies to them, how it connects us all together. But rather than have me go into it here, we need to get into my interview with Janet Havorka, author of Zap the Grandma Gap, and she's going to tell us all about these new workbooks. Keep in mind, I'm thinking about that time right after Christmas, before they head back to school and things start to die down, and there's a little bit of quiet time in there to spend as family. Wouldn't it be great to have some of these workbooks in front of you to kind of sit down with the kids, maybe turn off the TV for a few minutes, and spend some fun time playing some games and learn about ancestors? Janet's going to tell us all about it. So here's my interview with Janet Havorka. studies have shown that when kids know more about their family history, it really empowers them. It fosters their self-esteem, resilience in tough times, and it gives them a greater sense of control over their lives. And when kids and parents and grandparents explore their family's past together, of course, it strengthens their relationship. I mean, after all, our kids have something very special in common with us they don't have in common with all their friends, and that's a shared history. Well, my guest today is my good friend and author of the book, Zap the Grandma Gap, which helps parents and grandparents lead the way in all of this, and that's Janet Hovorka. Hi, Janet.
Hi.
It's so good to have you back here on the show. How are you?
Good. It's good to be back on the show. Perfect introduction. That was just exactly true and right. That's exactly right.
Well, there's been I had people emailing me, listeners emailing me and saying, oh, I think I saw on, Katie Couric, this guy was talking about that one of the ways to be a healthy family is to have a more of a knowledge of your family history. And we were like, yay, amen. That's what we all believe in. And I know that you feel that way strongly too.
Very much so, yep.
Yeah, well, I know you have launched a series of activity books, which is why I wanted to get you back on the show. And these are just for kids. And, of course, they bring a whole bunch of fun to this exploration of family history. And, of course, this is all kind of in conjunction with your book, Zap the Grandma Gap. So tell everybody real quickly, if they don't recall, what the premise of that book is.
The premise of that, the first book, Zap the Grandma Gap, is what the subtitle is, and that is to connect yourself to your family by connecting them to their family history. And just like you said, building those stronger bonds between family members by working together to understand your family history together. And so in the first book, what I did was I just came up with tons and tons of ideas of different things that might work in your family, that might work with your family history, that make family history learning fun. I come from a really family history oriented family, and I just grew up with it in the culture of my home. It was up on our walls, it was in the food that we ate, it was in the traditions that we did. And my mom never really sat me down and did the things that sometimes we genealogists do to bore our kids, where we say, this is a census record and this is how you enter it into the computer and this is, all that kind of stuff. Kids don't want to do that. They want to have fun with it. And
yeah, no, their eyes roll back in their heads
exactly.
when we do that.
So yeah. That's exactly what my book is. It's that anti-eyes rolling back in the head solutions to how to make family history fun and to just breathe it into their lives and surround them with it so that they grow up learning a lot about their ancestors. They don't have to become genealogists. They don't have to become researchers for them to get all of those benefits you just talked about. They just have to know about their ancestors and the people that they came from. And so that's what I'm trying to help people do. There's the first book, and then and that regular book is a normal size book, and then there's a workbook, and those are for grandparents and parents to be able to figure out how to just breathe it into your life better. And those two worked in tandem together to help you just really think out, what are the places where my family history intersects with my child's interests. And where are the things that will create those sparks that will foster a love of their ancestors and a love of their history?
That is a challenge that, people face around the world. I know when we were in London earlier this year at the Who Do You Think You Are Live conference, you had so many people coming up to our table and they were telling you about their kids and their grandkids and their lack of interest. And I know they were really fascinated by how you might be able to tackle that challenge. And so that's what the book and the workbook is about. It's for the adult
right.
in the relationship to have some support and some ideas and all that kind of good stuff. And I think you make such an important point, which is we're not trying to create genealogists here, even though that's our perspective.
Right.
That's what got us excited. We wanted to become that.
Right.
The truth is, we're actually trying to breathe it into their lives. I love that phrase because it's almost like walk the talk. I often say, if you walk into a family historian's house and there isn't a single tree on the wall or photograph or whatever, then you're not really walking the talk, and you're not really incorporating it on a daily basis just into the lives of the rest of your family who doesn't necessarily want to be a genealogist.
Right.
So you've
the trick is, though, if you teach them to love it right now, they will be. By the time they're your age, they will be.
Yes.
That's
exactly
the secret.
Yeah. Well, and it become more natural, and it's a matter of them doing it because they've come to love and understand it versus you just told them,
Yes.
And so I know from getting the word to the adults, now you're reaching out to the kids, and that's what these workbooks are, right? You've got 4 of them in the initial series?
Yeah, the first 4 are called My Swedish Ancestor, My British Ancestor, My Civil War Ancestor, and My German Ancestor. And they're different than any other children's family history books that you've ever seen. Again, I don't go into this is how to research, this is the censuses, all of that kind of stuff. I go into, this is Gothic German handwriting. It's kind of like a secret code. See if you can write your name in this Gothic handwriting. Or
fun.
Or make a Black Forest cherry cake together. Or
these are like the activity books we used to do when we were kids.
Exactly.
There was the coloring book, and then there was the activity book, and I love this. It's like the activity book on genealogy steroids.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. I've tried to take it not from the genealogy side and turn it into a workbook for children, but take it from what children are already used to seeing: the crossword puzzles, the mazes, the coloring book, the paper dolls, all of those things that children are used to already doing, kind of the worksheets at school and all that kind of stuff, and bring that and then apply it back to genealogy. And so it's just a couple of fun workbooks that will get them started and hopefully asking questions. One of the things I've really discovered with my own kids that helps, and they're teenagers now, they're kind of on the older side of these workbooks, but they're good to help tell me what works and what doesn't. What's really made a difference in my own kids, even since I wrote the first books, is when I give them their own ownership of it. So when I have a family history book and I give them their own copy, or when I make a copy of the computer file, like I said, they're a little older, so they're doing a little more. But when they have it on their own computer, when they have their own logins for things, when they have their own ownership of it, it seems to make quite a bit of difference. And that is the part that resonated with me too. I think sometimes we can be kind of gatekeepers and say, these are mine, this is the, but one of the best pages I think in all the workbooks too is a page where it says, oh yeah, prove it. And it has the child put an envelope in that page and then ask their family members for copies of documents. And it says, that the actual documents need to be kept in a safe place, but you need your own copies of it. And really giving, the whole workbook gives the child the ownership of, I'm going to do these activities and I'm going to ask for help, from my family members. And hopefully we want it to be the whole family involved, but hopefully the child can kind of take the lead in getting the whole family involved and really having ownership over their own family history.
And this is their own little book. I mean, it's a standalone. It's not like you have to sit there with your Zap the Grandma Gap book and say, okay, now let's turn to page 10. They can grab this and they can do whatever. I mean, I remember as a kid, I was a dot-to-dot fiend.
Exactly.
I love dot-to-dot.
Yep.
So, of course, I would skim through the book and find that first.
Yeah.
So they can jump in there anywhere they want, right?
Absolutely. There's fairy tales, there's maps to color, there's recipes, there's games to play, activities, all sorts of things that the child can do even on their own. Lots of puzzles, lots of crosswords and all sorts of things that they can do on their own. But then hopefully, you can do some of them together as an activity as well. So.
Yeah. Well, and I know you were telling me that it's a good thing to have in the purse. You're sitting in the doctor's office or waiting at the stop sign and you can pull it out and hand it to the kids.
Yeah,
right?
That's where I knew that these were resonating, was when I took a few of the proofs for them and I needed some of the puzzles solved so that I could do the answers for the back. We were waiting for something with my 17-year-old, 15-year-old, and 13-year-old. And I pulled them out and I said, hey, to one of them, the younger one, can I have you do some of these puzzles while we're waiting. And the other two both went, oh, I want to do one. I want to do one. And so I was like, yes, okay, they're working. This is good. So
that's awesome.
And some of the puzzles are a little bit on the older side. We're saying they're kind of for 8 to 14-year-olds. There's kind of a sweet spot there where a child is old enough to understand, history and things like that, but then still young enough to still be really attached to their family and not in that teenage disassociating thing too much yet. So they're kind of in that range.
Right. So what's your hope for this series? I know you've had a real vision of of the direction you're trying to go, both in supporting the adults and also the kids. What do you see down the road? What are you hoping that families will get out of this?
Oh, that's a really good question. I just hope we can raise a generation that is more grounded in understanding who they are and why they are where they are. I look at the things that family history has brought into my life, that sense of perspective on life, of realizing how important my decisions are because they affect the generations that come later, and also of understanding that I understand sometimes the issues that are in your family that every family has. I love to say that if you don't have a scoundrel yet, then you haven't done enough family history, and if you don't have a hero yet, you haven't done enough family history. Those heroes are people that I look up to, and the things that you can learn from family history and the way that it gives you a grounding and an understanding that helps you go forward into the future with much better understanding. Even the family history research that I've done on my husband's lines have helped me understand him so much better, the way that he was raised and the things that his family was dealing with, helped strengthen our marriage, helped me understand what we're passing down into my children. And hopefully I'm doing that in a much more healthy way because I understand it. Those things affect you whether you understand them or not. But I think understanding your family's past helps, create healing and also really gives you inspiration at times, and the fortitude to go through and conquer tough challenges. Like you said, it gives you resilience. It makes you feel like you're in control of your world. And it does that for me. I hope we can raise a next generation. That's why I chose this superhero grandma theme, is because I honestly feel like family history saves the world. That the more we understand our past, the more we can go into the future with a healthy sense of who we are.
I think that is so true. Well, I know that's why you and I click the way we always have, because there's such a total meeting of the minds on that. And I know in my life, it's been a lot about also, you're not alone. You can have a very small family. You can have a fragmented family. You could just be rebuilding your family, whatever it is. But there's a sense of this is bigger than just us, which takes a little bit of the pressure off, that in a sense, we're not just like starting from scratch. We are part of this chain of people who have really survived and gotten through good and bad times. And it's people that the kids can look back to, because I think it's kind of tough when all you have is, well, mom said so and dad said so, that's it, and when the kids have, well, let's look back and say, wow, this is what my uncle did. He fought in the war, or, my grandparents made that trip in that boat. Oh my gosh, to get to America. There's a sense that there's, like you say, so many more heroes and role models and people to look to. Maybe, and don't you find the kids oftentimes, they'll spot somebody in the family tree who has a trait that they have.
Yes.
And maybe they haven't seen it in their parents or their siblings, but they go, oh my gosh, that's so me.
Yeah, and they feel a sense of belonging in the world that is really lacking in some people. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it gives me a sense of how important my decisions are. Like I said, because you see how that affects other people, but it also gives me a sense of hope that I'll be remembered, hopefully, for the good things that I did, and that I can make a good impact on this world, even though I make a lot of mistakes. And that's another thing I really like to say too, is that every scoundrel has some hero in them, and every hero has some scoundrel in them, and family history gives you that real perspective on a life, on a whole person's life, and the mistakes that they make and the things that they do right, and then that gives me hope that maybe the things that I'm trying to do right will overcome the mistakes that I've made in my life, and that things will go forward, and that my children and my grandchildren and great grandchildren into the future will be able to draw strength from the things that I've tried to do for them too.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, what wonderful parents our kids will be to be able to then pass it on,
exactly.
To understand more of it and know that they're going to bring that to their kids. So, let's get down to the brass tacks here. The books show up on our front porch. We've decided we're going to, integrate this into our family. Where do we start? Can we just hand the books to the kids? They can jump around in the books? What tips do you have for the parents and grandparents? It's kind of a good way to introduce this and get the ball rolling.
Okay. I think absolutely. You hand the book to the kid. I think it's an activity book. It's like a coloring book or a crossword book or whatever that they can just take and get to work on. But I think hopefully you'll do some of those things together. Glance through it and say, hey, let's do this activity together. Let's celebrate St. Lucia Day, or let's do some of the things. For the British one, it's a family history tea party that's so cute and so fun, and I can't wait to have granddaughters to do this too. But hey, let's do some of these activities together. Kind of encourage them, but certainly you can jump around. I think the biggest thing I've learned from my own kids too is just not to over instruct them. Not to sit down and say, hey, this is how we do this. And hopefully these books are very much that way, that you can say, hey, look at this. Oh, I bet you can do it. And let them take the lead. I think when kids feel like they're in charge, that's always a really good thing.
I think and it's their idea, right?
It's their idea, exactly. So, help them out with some recipes or some of the things, the paper dolls, color them together and then maybe tell some stories together, but let them take the lead in deciding what to do. And you can totally jump around on these. There's no chronological order or nothing like that. Just let them go for it.
Awesome. And this was kind of a family project, wasn't it? Your sister worked with you on these.
Yes, as a matter of fact. Yeah, it was very fun. My sister has just graduated with her master's degree in folklore, and she had some time and was able to help me with these, and it's turned into a great love for her too. She has a lot of background in dance and music and cooking, and she's done a lot of traveling, and so we planned these out together, and she was a great help in a lot of the aspects, the fairy tales and the music and different parts that were in these and the activities. It was really fun that's what I wrote on the back too, is that we're living proof that it does strengthen your relationships, because we had so much fun putting these together with each other. So.
Does she do genealogy per se? Does she work on that end of things?
She has some. She's definitely interested. She grew up in that same family history oriented home that I did. And so she's quite a bit younger than me. She hasn't hit that stage yet. She doesn't have any children yet where she wants to pass down that heritage. I think she definitely will be. She knows a lot about it. She hasn't become a researcher like I have, but I can completely see her becoming a researcher at some point if she decides to.
What I love about it, you told me that, you brought her into it, and I thought that is so perfect, because it's not trying to make somebody what we are. It's actually saying you have these special gifts and talents, and she's got all that background, and she can bring that to the table. I mean, I think that's a wonderful role model for just dealing with our kids too.
Yeah.
It's not trying to get them into the genealogy mold, but it's saying, boy, you are really good at the word puzzles. Look at that. Or you could build stuff that, reminds us of our family and take advantage of our skills and strengths.
I talk a lot about that in the book and the workbook, the first books that we did. And that is looking for what their strengths are and then applying that back to your family history, because family history involves everything. It involves languages and culture and all sorts of things. And especially, Amy and I, the things that we did together, I brought the kind of genealogy research aspect to it, but she brought the fill in the blanks cultural part to it, which I think really combines well in these workbooks, that not only do you learn about your own ancestors, but you learn about what their lives were like. And she brought that whole puzzle pieces of what their lives were actually like to it. But yeah, absolutely. Every part of family history applies to somebody's interests or hobbies. I mean, there's just so many things that family history involves as far as science and fashion and, everything that there's something for everybody in family history. They just have to find out what it is.
Well, and you're living proof, young lady, of somebody who has incorporated this into their own family. Your kids are proof. I mean, because I remember back when you were saying, oh my gosh, I don't think they're ever going to pick up any of this stuff. And then you had them entering data or transcribing, doing volunteer projects. And now, as I recall, your son is going to be doing a presentation at Roots Tech, is he not?
He, they're coming along. They have every reason not to like family history because they have someone who's uber obsessed with it, and it's taken over their house and everything else. And they live with our company, our chart printing company. But actually, the more that I just do, I kind of turned them into lab rats with my first book and kind of said, okay, what works and what doesn't. And I'm still doing that a lot. But they also just have it around them. They just living and breathing it. And they're starting to really take some of it in. I think my oldest and my youngest are coming along too, but my middle child is really quite interested, and he's done a lot of stuff on his own even. And last year when he went to the Roots Tech presentations and he said, I want somebody to do this and this and this, and I want him to show me this and this and this, he was kind of frustrated. He wanted to learn some other things, but he didn't want to go to any of the adult classes. And so this year when they did the call for papers, I said, put your money where your mouth is. If you want a kid teaching it, you got to teach it yourself. And so he submitted, and lo and behold, they took it.
Yeah.
And he's really excited about that, which is really fun. We were just at a local conference this past weekend, and he's been doing a lot of conferences with me, just with our company as well. And he's really enjoying that. And he had people coming up to him this last weekend saying, I hear you're speaking at Roots Tech. And he's just over the moon. He's really proud of himself. So I have to thank the community for doing that for him too, because that's just put a little more fire under him, and he's my good potential there. He may turn into a really, really good researcher. He already is doing really well with it. And like I said, I think the other kids will too. And the oldest actually is probably he's my most teenager right now. He's my most, if mom thinks it's cool, then it is so not cool,
Right.
And you'll ask him if he likes family history or anything like that. And he'll be like, oh, I don't want to do anything like that. But if you ask him about that particular ancestor, or what do you know about this ancestor, or what do you know about that, or why we do this tradition, he knows a ton. And you know what? That still pays off in his life, in all those benefits. And that's all I need. He doesn't have to turn into a researcher. That's okay. He just needs to know about his family history. So
exactly. He doesn't have to say, I love it, I'm totally into it, but it's just part of the fabric of his life. And that's
honestly,
the key.
When he comes out of those crazy teenage years, I think it's going to come to pay off. And it even is kind of a scaffolding through their teenage years. That, he knows he can't get away with much. He knows he's got a family counting on him and hoping that he'll hold up the family name. And I think it affects him more than he would ever let on. So.
Yeah, and they don't even have to be aware, do they? We just want it to be there and kind of present in their life. And I'm at the other end, where the kids are now adults and forging their own ways, and it is awfully nice to see how it reverberates back. And you see that impact. And
once, I'm sure you're starting to see too with your daughter, once they have their own kids, they're starting to look for ways to raise those kids in a healthy way. And they start being able to draw on some of those things that you built for them, in their heritage.
You've built some wonderful resources for all of us, everybody listening. The books to support us as the adults, the workbooks, which are super fun. And finally, I want you to tell everybody that there's a website too.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources just on the website even too. It's zapthegrandmagap.com. And there's a free 52-week newsletter every Tuesday morning. It's a different idea about how to help you, just one idea every week. Hey, go try this. there's that. And then there's also a free 35-page PDF workbook that is for the child as well. It's not specific to any culture. It kind of helps them record their own life. What's the floor plan of your bedroom? What's a day in your life like? Go interview your grandpa, things like that. So that's there free on the web. And then there's excerpts of the books, and then of course the Pinterest and blog and Twitter and Facebook. We're trying to really create a community where we can figure these things out. And we've had some great submissions of ideas for the blog and for things that I'm going to try in my own family, because if it works in your family, it might work in my family. And I've come up with some really exciting new things that I'm going to try that we've had users submit on the blogs and stuff. So we'd love to hear if you've got a great idea that you want to share with somebody. Come join the community there and share your great idea, and we'll try to figure out how to raise this next generation in a good, healthy way.
That's the most important thing we could possibly be doing.
Yep.
And I love everything that you're doing to support it. For those of you listening, I've got all the details for you in the show notes for this episode. And of course, when you use links to pick up some of these amazing books, you're also helping to support the free podcast. So we always appreciate that. But these are really fun. Really, that's to me the key. You've finally made it fun for the kids.
I hope so.
And what a perfect workbook. I mean, just roll that puppy up and stick it in a stocking, and they've got a little activity book. What a wonderful time of year, actually, through the holidays, because it gets a little quiet and they haven't gone back to school yet. And you can say, well, go grab your workbook, go, and we're going to sit down for a few minutes by the fireplace or whatever. And what a nice time when there's a little break in all the other activities and television, everything's on hiatus, so they could pull out their workbook and get into it.
Yep.
So fun to visit with you. And I'm just, congratulations. These are just fantastic books. How fun. Are you going to tell us what's in the works as far as future workbooks?
As far as future ones, we have a whole bunch planned out. I'm not sure we've got them in the right order, but I'm kind of watching to see, how these go and what resonates, and then we'll figure out the order of the next things. But there's a lot more in the works. So we're really excited about hopefully making a difference.
And it sounds like then that people who get the workbooks could communicate with you through the website and kind of let you know what's ringing with the kids.
Yes.
And get that input into you for, really have an impact on what comes down the pipe.
Yes. Please. In fact, and we've had a lot of people request, hey, when are you going to do the Irish one? When are you going to do the next one?
Yeah.
So let us know what you're looking for, what you need for your family, and that'll help us decide, which part to do next. So,
Wonderful. All right, sweetheart. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I love it, and we will have you back soon.
Thank you.
I always love having Janet here on the show. She is such a sweetheart. We're very kindred spirits in many ways because of our feelings and our motivations about doing family history. And I'm so appreciative that she came here on the show. I have links to all of her workbooks in the show notes for this episode. This is episode 162. So if you want to check them out, you can leaf through the pages, kind of see what's there. You can order them online. Of course, when you do that through our links, you're also supporting the free podcast. So we always appreciate that. But these are really wonderful resources. And I know that she's got some more coming in the pipeline, as she mentioned. So to find the show notes for this episode, go to genealogygems.com. Hover your mouse over podcast, select the Genealogy Gems podcast, and then follow the links numerically to episode 162. Well, thank you so much for joining me for Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 162. I don't know where the time goes, but it's already flown by. As always, you can get in touch with me at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. I hope you're getting the Genealogy Gems newsletter because we had kind of a fun issue. This last one I sent out a new Pinterest board that I put together. Pinterest has just launched a new feature where you can pin places on a map. It's very cool. So check that out. I think we blogged about it on the blog as well, but it's also in the newsletter. Of course, premium members have the complete newsletter archive available to you as part of premium membership. But if you haven't already signed up for the newsletter, if you're new to the podcast, I hope you do so because we always have great tips in there and new features like this that come out. You hear about Pinterest and you just wonder, and what am I supposed to do with this? And I know the bigger question is, and do I really have time for this? But I think this new feature really has some great potential for family historians. And of course, it's also a great place to collect information on family history, crafting projects and display projects. And I've even seen people pin an ancestor's life. I know there's all kinds of interesting stuff going on out there. Check out my boards if you haven't checked them out already. It's Pinterest.com/Lisa Louise Cook. And of course, there's a link in the show notes for you. But check out the map. I tried to go out and pin all the best libraries across the United States for genealogy. And it was a great starting board to use this new map pinning feature. I've got some more ideas. I've got some new projects I'm going to work on. I'm going to get those out to you in the newsletter in the coming issues. So check that out. And I think that's it for now. So thank you for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.